All right, we are live. And we can let some people trickle in here. Give it a couple of minutes since we're at 0 viewers so far.
How you doing this Friday, Chris?
I'm good. Doing well. Excited for the weekend. So,
Yeah,
how about yourself?
about the same. Just getting geared up for the weekend and starting. Our football season starts, so we have a jamboree tomorrow. So it's my kid's his first time playing in tackle football games, so it'll be interesting.
Nice. Starting them young.
We'll see.
How's the heat down there?
It actually started cooling off a little bit. So
Okay.
like the humidity's dropped, so the heat index isn't as bad. So it's not bad right now. Actually last night we were at football practice. I was coaching and I was like, I could deal with this. I'm not like drenched in sweat like I normally am out there. So but yeah, it's finally getting some I would say September-ish weather in August, which isn't bad because it's been brutally hot here lately.
Well, I'm jealous. It's a high of 96 today. So all that heat down in Florida, I guess it's getting transferred over to Denver. But we can get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Nuage's Office Hours and Lunch and Learn. I'm your host, Chris Balla, one of the account executives and project sponsors here at Nuage. I've been working with NetSuite and working on NetSuite for the past 3 years. My role with the organization as a project sponsor is really working with you on your journey through NetSuite. So whether it's going through an evaluation of ERPs, evaluating NetSuite, whether it's finding the right partner for the implementation, or finding post-go live support, finding a team that can help you really optimize your NetSuite environment. That's what I'm geared here to help with. For today's Lunch and Learn, our office hours, this is our 4th session. We are running these on a bi-weekly basis. So we're trying to do these every other Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. This is a great opportunity for these viewers to ask questions to a NetSuite expert. Gauge Glenn's understanding and ideas on what better ways to optimize your environment, help on what solutions we should be looking for, whether it's third party, it's NetSuite, it's other systems out there. So really just a great opportunity to learn a little bit more, understand how Nuage and our team can help you. Again, I'm Chris Balla, one of the account executives here. Alongside me, I've got Glenn Saunders. He's one of our partners. He's our solution architect, Swiss Army knife, if you will. So with that, Glenn, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I hope you know you're using the term expert pretty liberally when you're talking about me, but
no.
I've got introduce myself. I've been doing ERP systems for 19 years now. Background in quite a few others, Epicor, Microsoft Dynamics. And I've been working in the NetSuite ecosystem since 2012. Seen a lot of evolution and changes within that during that time period. New modules, new features, just all sorts of fun stuff. And just really drank the Kool-Aid with NetSuite and what it can deliver and where it fits in the marketplace. And I can't promise to know everything, but certainly can offer my help. I can tell you there's certain modules, Suite Commerce, some of those things, not my expertise, manufacturing, distribution, projects. That's really where I sit within the application and what I do. I do have a background in accounting, so if I get nerdy and start talking about accounting and rev rec stuff, that's just a throwback to my days of college when I was studying accounting. But I appreciate you having me, and I like changing up the host a little bit, getting to aggravate you now, Chris, for a little bit for an hour here. So looking forward to it.
Maybe I'm here to stay. We'll see. And then another thing to call out, this meeting is being recorded. So if you want to watch it at a later date or you want to share it with a colleague, a friend, you'll have the opportunity to. So we're excited to get started here. I will kick off with our first question. And these questions, so everyone knows, you have the opportunity to put these in the chat with live questions. We also have some questions from some customers of ours, and then some questions that we've pulled through Reddit. So first question, Glenn, is around NetSuite WMS. What are the pros and cons? What are you seeing with the solution and how it compares with the other applications out there?
So, I mean, I think the pros are WMS is a very simplistic barcode scanning solution to get set up. When you think of what a full WMS can do and its capabilities, that's not necessarily where NetSuite plays in the marketplace. But if you're looking to automate and go paperless, so to speak, in your warehouse, NetSuite offers a lot of tools at a very advantageous price point with pretty easy to do implementation. Assuming you have kind of your warehouse set up, that's usually where things can get complicated as we're renumbering our bin system. So we have to structure everything and then loading it all in as bin. So you have that initial count. But the pros are it's pretty simplistic to use. It's basic in what it delivers. But the cons are as you evolve as an organization, it doesn't necessarily have some of those features. We kind of built a quasi license plating application for it because that's been a need of some of our customers. But when you really get into directed space optimization, put away, bin replenishment, a lot more complicated logistics within the warehouse itself. NetSuite doesn't have those capabilities, and really, there's when we talk about WMS systems, it's kind of baseline entry systems, which is kind of where I would put NetSuite. I might anger some folks that work for NetSuite by saying that, but it kind of exists right there. Then you kind of have like tier 2 systems, which I would probably qualify RF Smart and some of those, and then you get into Manhattan and High Jump and Blue. Oh, I'm gonna blank on it. Blue Yonder, is that right? I can't remember. And Logfire, which Oracle bought, it's now Oracle WMS. Those that are really much more complicated in the setup and the logistics and the management of how you structure your warehouse. So it's just what makes sense. And I've seen organizations that use QuickBooks but have High Jump, right? Because that manages their production, that manages all of their operational aspects, and then their financials are kind of simple. I do think with NetSuite, the interchangeability to manage some of your inventory within it and offer those types of opportunities. And plus, NetSuite has integrations with most of those systems, High Jump being a big one. Before they acquired Accelos was kind of the mid-tier partner that you went to when you had more complicated WMSs within NetSuite. And there's still like Oslink and a lot of different players in that space now that can do it. But I think the pros are the native integration functionality. It also integrates with manufacturing mobile. If you're of mind to use manufacturing mobile, that's built on the same platform. But there's certainly customers that will be beyond the needs of NetSuite's native WMS. And it's just knowing that going in, what you're getting, and then evolving from there. So, plan, measure twice, cut once. It goes the same thing with thinking about operational systems like this. And particularly when you're talking about, I always say software does what software does, but the truth is when people are physically moving product or taking their hands and doing something with a product, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not just clicking the button and entering an AP invoice. It's product movement, it's manufacturing, welding, whatever it is. It's a whole different ball of wax. So you have to think about it conceptually. Like we had a customer a while back, and they wanted to use barcode scanning and all this other things. And you walk in their facility, and it's like, because of a manufacturer, you have to wear an entire suit because you get soot everywhere. It's not real soot. It's not like burning stuff. It's like there is no way you could deploy touchscreens or any type of real-time data capture information within that facility. There's just no way without installing a clean room because of all of that. So there's always reality and what you desire from a perspective. And I think, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent from pros and cons, but those are the realities of when operational executives start thinking about implementing these types of technologies and the impact they can have on the business. You have to consider the reality.
Sure.
But again, I think NetSuite WMS is a great way to crawl, walk, run with a WMS system. And again, it's pretty easy to set up and get going, and then evolve into complexity. Just be careful if you're trying to customize it. It's very different from the native NetSuite ecosystem. And we learned a lot in our time doing that, of what to do and what not to do and how it works and interchangeability. So those are just some things to keep in mind as you're going through that, for sure.
Okay, great. Well, that was descriptive, hopefully helpful. I will change gears here, and this is more on the clicking side in purchasing. Question is, I'm working on a purchase order from a specific vendor that gives us a discount. How do I show that discount in the purchase order? And my initial thought is that not a native field that they could potentially add to the purchase order in NetSuite?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you can take a discount directly on that. Most people want to add a discount item, which is just an item type within NetSuite that you can then take from a discount perspective on there. I believe you can also look directly on the purchase order, and there's just a discount amount or discount percentage, similar to the way you can do it within a sales order. But a discount item is another option as well. You can also, apply discounts to those and apply different terms and things like that from a vendor perspective. Some of it depends on when you're taking the discount. It might be at payment or somewhere along those lines, but there's a lot of different ways to handle that when you get to that point for managing that.
Okay. Anything else to add there? Or?
No, I think it's just how you want it to be reflected in your financial statements, as well as when you want to capture that discount. If it's truly just off invoice, as they call it, where your list price is X, but you get a price break, that's when you want to consider that.
Okay. All right. Well, we had a long question come in here. I have a specific scenario where a sales order was created with an incorrect amount. A revenue arrangement has already been generated and is in progress. What's the best course of action to properly bill and recognize the remaining amount? Should we create a new sales order for the remaining amount and then merge the new revenue arrangement with the existing revenue arrangement? I assume the original order and revenue arrangement are locked from editing the amount fields. This is a bit more descriptive, so I will leave this to you. And then I'll share this on our border as well, or our banner, excuse me.
No worries. And and this is one of those I'm probably not going to answer completely, because there's a lot of what if scenarios. For one, they mentioned this is a fully billed sales order. And so you could certainly amend the sales order to add a line item to it. And that flows to the revenue arrangement. It gets updated and it flows through. You could absolutely create a new sales order and then merge the revenue arrangements. Those are both perfectly good avenues from doing that. If the revenue arrangement is fully recognized, I do believe it is locked unless it gets updated from an existing transaction. And some of that also depends on when you have your revenue arrangements being generated, whether generated on billing, sales order creation, or whatever it is. So those are some considerations to take into effect. But honestly, I'd have to go play with this and see what the best scenario is. And some of it depends on reporting outputs. If it's like, why is it changed, right? Oh, it's a separate order. It's a change order. Or we just scoped it improperly and we need to update the amount. So it gets into some of that like contract value reporting that you want to think about as well, that we want to consider. So just some caveats, but you're on the right path. I would just work through the scenarios, quite frankly, to see which made the most sense for us. So. And then it looks like Louis just messaged me on Teams that there was a question in the comments that if you've been on One World and you don't need it, can you go backwards? No. You might can negotiate with NetSuite that it's not needed to get some additional consideration. I'm probably going to get shot for that. But it goes back to, I'll give you, for those that are interested, a little history lesson. NetSuite used to provision non-One World accounts and One World accounts. I don't know what that means from a technical aspect on the backside. However, when they went to the Suite Success model, every account that was Suite Success was provisioned as One World. I'm sure prior to One World, this had to do with some technological stuff on the back end. But once you're enabled as a One World organization, that you're always going to be One World. Now, however, because they changed the model to where it's based off of countries, you can, from my understanding, deactivate countries. So that may be better. So let's say I have operations in US, Canada, and Germany, and China, and we shut down our operations in China. And I no longer need that One World account. From my understanding, you can deactivate that country to only pay for the countries you need, but you will always be a One World account. Also, I will say, I don't even think you can purchase NetSuite without One World enabled anymore in your home country. It kind of, they switched things around when they redid some of their pricing kind of structure and how they looked at modules and functionality. So everybody that has NetSuite for the last 5 years is always One World. And I'm sure I'm wrong somewhere along the way that there's somebody somewhere that doesn't, but that's the general rule that we all have been working under. So
True. Okay, great. If there's any follow-up questions to that, please throw them in the chat. And then in the meantime, I will go to the next question here. What is your favorite feature in NetSuite that we should be using if we're not already? And I have an answer for this too, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, I have enjoyed playing around with some of the analytics workbook. That is kind of a feature. And sorry, Louis asking me a question. How hard is it to implement? There is no implementation for it. It's a disable of a feature and it just goes away. That country you can no longer transact in, basically. If you're enabling One World, it's a pretty simple setup. It's more on how you set up your intercompany relationships for eliminations and all that stuff, but still pretty straightforward. And one of the features, if you need to move your subsidiaries around, sorry, I'm going back to the last question, Chris, because Louis is bothering me. That if you can move your subsidiaries around, so when you create a new one, if you need to move it within your subsidiary hierarchy, you used to have to call support, get it enabled for 24 hours. Now there's a feature, I think, in your general preferences that allows you to do that. So that's a little bit easier and more straightforward than it used to be. So that's something to consider. Okay, favorite feature in NetSuite. Analytics workbook, mostly because for the longest time, you could link workbooks together, but you couldn't do much with it after the fact, which was kind of annoying. Now you can, and I think that's fantastic. So when you link workbooks together, I can pull in data sets from different disparate systems, create 2 data sets, link them together, and then report on them. And for those that have ever worked with saved searches, you can only go 2 levels. You can't go multi-level. You can't go 3. You can go 2. You can go from the main table to the next related table, but you can't go 3 levels. Well, with analytic workbooks, you can. And I can even create a table structure here, and link them together, and then report off of those elements. Now, you have to get your key constraints and all that. Now I'm going down the database side, but you have to get your relationships correct. But once you get your relationships correct and your data formatted correctly, then you can report on those things. Now, where does it need to go? It needs to be, I need to be able to pull that query into Excel for Power Pivot and some other stuff. I need to be able to export it. I need to be able to do a lot of, the chart and graph system that NetSuite has in analytics is just not there. They need a lot more functionality. And I know it's never going to be a Power BI or analytics warehouse, but it needs to be better, just charts, graphs, and stuff. That's my 2 cents. I think that's just an opportunity that, I've done quite a bit of reporting for our Stratus customers around utilization. For you guys from a sales team, matching up different elements of quota versus bookings versus a bunch of different stuff where I can now report on it within the application. So
I was going to ask if you could share an example of where we're using it internally. Some of the features functionality you like with analytics workbook.
Yeah. So within our Stratus customers, they get a monthly allocation of hours, and I want to know what their total hour utilization is, because we want them to use hours. If I see someone not using hours, I call or I say, "Hey, is everything okay? Hey, we're just busy this month. Okay, we can roll hours over to the next month." Because again, our job is to deliver value, not to just eat up hours. And secondarily, I can look at who's working on what project, and I can see that all in one big format. It's a little wide, a little busy, but I can look at it pretty quickly and see that. And then because of the way we do our sales reporting, particularly for some of it, I created a couple of different dashboards using an analytic workbook that show quota attainment for you guys in a pivot table by each month, by each quarter in total, so I can see how you guys' sales team are doing. Don't you like Big Brother looking over your shoulder all the time?
Love it. Can't get enough. Yeah, and I'd say my favorite feature is just the global search, and I'm sure it's functionality everybody's using, but just having the ability, and I think for our sales team to go in, if I want to look up a specific customer, say John Smith, being able to get into specifics, not specific to our business, but getting into the item, getting into the company, anywhere John Smith is associated with that record. So I think that functionality is great, and then also, it's easy to get lost in NetSuite. And I think if you're trying to find a feature or a report, being able to just use the global search as an assistance is nice. So
yeah, there's no doubt that's the best feature. Short of maybe save searches, because you can just the interoperability of save searches to put them on different forms, and man, there's so much cool stuff you can do with that with linking it. But definitely the global search is a lifesaver when looking for stuff.
Yeah. Seen you use it a couple of times.
Yeah, just a few hundred.
All right, so we'll go to the next one here. And actually, it looks like we've got another comment as well. Are there any benefits of using an iPaaS solution over a direct connection? At what point does using an iPaaS solution make sense?
Absolutely. So integrations are always interesting, right? Because how do you handle errors between two API interchanges? How do you handle communication failure? Internet goes out halfway through the data transmission. Where an iPaaS solution to me makes a lot of sense is if you're managing multiple integration points and you don't want to build infrastructure to be able to monitor and manage that within your NetSuite ecosystem, having an iPaaS solution provides more seamless connection between the various groups and then one central place to view them. Plus, you can typically click, not code, for transformations. And it makes it a little easier for a somewhat technical user to manage without having to go directly to a developer. But I think it's really the level and scale of the integrations that drive the business requirement, and what your strategy is with that. If you know you're going to have multiple connections and they're going to evolve over time and different things like that, it absolutely makes sense. I know those things can be expensive and they're getting more expensive, but I think the time savings and being able to quickly stand up and plug something else in is pretty critical, pretty nice for the business, that you don't have to hire a developer, do a ton of tests. I mean, you obviously have to do testing. I shouldn't say that, but you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of development requirements. It's more you can build on the fly and deploy very quickly with the added benefit of the infrastructure. Because again, I think if you don't have that, I think you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. Okay, so we get this return from that API. We need to write that back into NetSuite so we have visibility. Otherwise, how are we going to notify people that this happened, and how do we handle errors? And you have a lot more functionality kind of pre-built into those packages that allow you to do that. So I think it also depends on how, is it a transactional based interchange, or is it, customer information? Is it syncing daily, or is it syncing every 15 minutes? And then what's the impact to the business if it doesn't, right? If it's a low impact item, maybe it is easier just not to pay that subscription for an iPaaS solution. But if it's going to have real business impact, you want a good middleware to handle that for you. So,
Okay. And I know as a NetSuite partner, one of Nuage's big differentiators, and we bring it up all the time, is having developers in-house. You manage that team. What are our developers' experience working with iPaaS solutions? When do we come across it most often?
I mean, to be honest, about all of our customers have some sort of connection. There's a few that don't, but we have our own FTP interchange that we built. We have we've worked with Boomi, Lego, Far App. We're starting to do some Workato. Pretty much you name it. A new one did surface the other day that we haven't, called Patchworks, but okay. I'm sure that'll happen sooner rather than later. So, it's just one of those things. And honestly, I know people are like, "Well, do you have experience with that?" But as a developer, not that I'm a developer because I'm not that smart, but it's one of those things that it's just a different tool set. Like if you can, read a certain computer language, it's not that different. I think it's a different tool that you're using to build those things, and it's just knowing, you learn and adapt. So here's the easy. It's like writing Microsoft SQL or Oracle SQL or MySQL. The commands are a little different, but the function's still the same. So, and that's a real world example I've had to live. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'll get into the next question. This one's also a bit long, so I will attach it in the banner here in 1 second once I read through. But one of my clients wants to import historical data of 5 years from Sage to NetSuite. I haven't done historical data migration in a while, but I was thinking I could do summary trial balance for the 5 years. My question is, I remember for another client creating historical data customers / vendors and tagging on the accounts receivable and accounts payable accounts. And I do not know the purpose for it. I'm thinking of importing by month, but wondering if I should do reversals every month as well, except for the last month. When is it appropriate to do reversals? I also remember I have to create a special trial balance at the beginning of the year, which only includes the balance sheet accounts and no reversals, correct?
Hopefully, might be above my pay grade. Just the data stuff sometimes our team handles. I will say when you get into historical data conversion, that can be a very messy subject because customers and vendors change over time. The reason that my guess is that the reason that they tracked it within AP and AR is they want to understand spend or vendor spend and customer spend on a month-to-month basis within that. But the issue then is that builds their AR balance. So you have to relieve that AR balance, which is where those reversals come in. So then you can see it, but then you got to reverse it out. When if you're reversing it to zero, is it really accurate? Because that AR should carry into next month. So you kind of have to work that out. But if you want to track that type of information, and I get a lot of grief from our team sometimes about this, but this is what I think is the best method, and I'll die on this soapbox, is import your trial balance at a summary level. Import it so that it's easy, your financials are clean, you don't have all this in and out. You can run your financials very clean. Use custom transactions that are non-posting that you can do historical reporting on. Does that mean I have to create custom reports? Yes, it does. You can't, and quite frankly, I don't know. I don't use NetSuite's native reports very often. I'm typically writing my own Sage Search or my own analytics workbook, which that may not be the case for everyone. But to me, being able to pull that data in at a more detailed level, because I can take your customer order history and suck it in to a custom transaction table and then look at all the details that make it up and see order history, item history, vendor history, right? And then I can report on it. I can hang it off of my customer record. I can hang it off my vendor record. I can hang it off of the sales order if I want to, right? There's so much more functionality enabled in that. that I feel that's something that's underutilized, where people don't like it, and where I get grief from some of our consulting team when I tell this during the sales cycle, is if I go run just a sales history report, it doesn't show up, and it doesn't. But again, just knowing, it's like knowing you're going to look at historical information or go forward information. And it's so easy to build the reports to just look at both transaction tables. And in fact, that's how I got us where we could look at NetSuite bookings. So when we sell, we're a partner of NetSuite, and I want to track our NetSuite sales because God knows they hold us accountable to selling a certain amount of software. Now we have a custom transaction in NetSuite where I can see what was sold by customer, by sales rep in NetSuite. Now, does that have a financial impact for us? No, but I can view it and I know what it was. And then I can look at what we got in NetSuite and just cross-reference it. So, yeah, I'm not. Historical information, I think, makes sense in 5 years is certainly okay. Just do it at a summary level is my what I would caution you with, because every year you go back, you're going to run into an account that was used 5 years ago that's not in your map. I can't tell you the number of times we've had to do, and this was before NetSuite. So this is when we're writing SQL code to inject data into production systems for go live. And you go through it like 4 or 5 times. And these are usually larger organizations previously. And, account's not crosswalk and everything bombs out because one account used 5 years ago isn't in your chart of accounts today or wasn't crosswalked. So that's the other side of this, is making sure you get that done correctly.
Okay. Anything else, or on to the next?
That's it. Yeah. And if I'm incorrect on that, I'd be happy to set up a call with one of our team members, because they live and breathe the data stuff a lot more than I do. I stay away from data conversion if I can help it, by all means.
All right. Well, next, going back, I think to more of the development side and the question we had before last, can you share an example of how Nuage has utilized NetSuite APIs?
Absolutely. Gosh. Oh, we've created our own APIs. We've integrated with native NetSuite APIs, whether it be like we're working on a project right now to export invoices from the system. And then we have to import some data back in related to those invoices that get shipped to a separate system, making sure they're received. So we're using native NetSuite APIs to communicate that information. But we've also done it where we create our own API endpoint based on NetSuite's APIs that are specific to what we need to do to be able to pull that. And NetSuite, when they first launched the API browser and this and that, it was not fully built out, and it's kind of there now. So there's a lot more functionality and capabilities within it. But it certainly makes it a lot easier to develop quickly on the platform with integrations and things like that. And I know we've got some other APIs with third-party systems where we're ingesting large amounts of data and having to create both AP and AR transactions because of the way their subcontractor networks work. Now that's using their native system into NetSuite APIs. And we're looking at that, and then we're booking both invoices and AP transactions at real time and linking those for clearing purposes and payment purposes. So yeah, and again, not the expert. I just talked enough to the development team, but lots of experience working with those APIs. And not only that, I think what's nice is understanding where we may need to enhance some of that functionality to meet specific customer requirements.
Great. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. Again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. If you're joining us late, we'll be on here for the next 20 or 30 minutes. Actually, a question just came through. Hey, guys, is there a way to create a workflow that will pull the item description for the sales order and enter it into the custom field in the work order?
Yes. The trick with line item, line item workflows is that they only fire after submit. So the work order will get created and that custom field will be on the work order line, but not until you click save will it pull the description in from there. And that also assumes you're linking it. What you may want to do, I'm not sure if that's a natural transition that it can pull from, but you should be able to pull in the linking from the created from item sales description. You might be able to. That may require a script, actually. I'm not positive you can workflow it because you're going from the created from. But you may be able to just when you're creating the field to source it from the item description. But you're saying sales order item description, which tells me it's a custom description on the sales order line and not the item description from the item master. So if it is a custom description on the sales order line, I would create a custom field on the sales order line to mirror the description that's input. And then you can put that on the work order. And what will happen is it'll copy from that sales order to that work order. And you don't have to workflow it, but you will have to workflow the copying of the sales order on the sales order. I know that's complicated, right, and I'm probably not making any sense to anybody who doesn't understand the technical stuff in NetSuite, but essentially you're copying it from this field to this field on the sales order, but this is a custom field that will persist to the work order if the work order is created from the sales order.
That makes sense.
And if you're just trying to pull the item description from the item description master, that's workflow, and that's easy.
Okay. Great. And again, if you have further questions here, we're happy to set some time and meet one-on-one and dive a little bit deeper. All right. Next question. Is there a way to create a search that shows the snapshot quantity of an item at a location before the inventory count and then the inventory count value itself? Basically, what I think is basically a before and after snapshot.
Yes, there's a transaction type called inventory account, not inventory account, excuse me, inventory account that you can utilize.
Yep.
That should show you the snapshot details within there. And then if you're using smart count, it is called item count. And I have not played around extensively with those. They should have all the linking. I will say this, if you don't see it in Save Search, and this is a lesson learned from me, go to analytics and see if the data table is exposed there and what fields are exposed. There is a difference between what shows in a Save Search and what shows in analytics. And that's what I always look at. I look at this one, and if I can't, if I want to do it as a Save Search, I look at Save Search, and if I can't find it, I go look at analytics. And I think I've probably said this on this before, so I'm probably beating the dead horse here, but I had this happen with specifically around the way kit items are shown within a Save Search as opposed to analytics. So in analytics, I can say this is the part of a kit item and this part of this line item and show all the kit items, where in the Save Search, I can't, particularly if the kit is not said to print transaction lines. So that is a lesson learned from myself. So.
Okay, perfect. And then this one is around subsidiary management. So let me read this one first, since it's another long one. And then I will show it on the banner. My company has a subsidiary that was never added to NetSuite. They act more like a cost center, but send us an invoice with their payroll and office expenses, which we pay monthly. I added them as a subsidiary and checked the elimination box. Essentially, this is the only item hitting, and I wanted to use the intercompany elimination. What's the best method for this particular situation?
Yeah, so you need to set up your do to, do from accounts, and then you can basically process it as an automated intercompany journal entry that you can import directly from there, and it'll do the do to, do from between the entities. In this case, I would probably recommend that because you don't need a hands length transaction where you have to set up an intercompany vendor, intercompany customer, and do that back and forth. And that'll automatically flow from an elimination standpoint with the do to, do from, so that you're not having to work with it. That's how I would approach it.
Okay. So fairly straightforward.
I mean, I think so, but I'm sure I'm missing something. But yeah, I would just do, again, once you enable that intercompany elimination functionality, there's do to, do froms accounts that you define, and it's basically a clearing account. And it just goes through and affects the balance sheet. So whenever a transaction is posted, it'll just automatically create the do to, do from, and then those get cleared off in the elimination company at month end.
Okay.
You do hand link, that gets a little more hairy because you're buying inventory, you're buying something from somebody else. And it gives more separation, and that's the right way to do it. So in the US, we have complicated legal structure for a variety of reasons. Medical field. If I operate 50 medical sites, let's just say, use this as an example, 50 surgery centers, and I own them. Each surgery center is going to have 2 legal entities. It's going to have one for the building and one for the actual practice. So, and then you may have a holding company on top of it because of liability reasons. So, but I may have a shared service model where I need to allocate payroll across all those, or I may pay the entire Comcast bill for everywhere, and I've got to allocate that Comcast bill. So I have a lot of experience in kind of shared service models, so that's where I've seen this more times than I can count, and learned a lot from my mentor Julie years ago about this. So yeah, there's just a lot that goes into that, and that basically managed service, it comes here, I do it out, you do from at all the various levels, and it clears at the top.
Okay. And then I guess just from your experience with Nuage, how would you say we handle multi-subsidiary management, multinational requirements? Can you share some experience we have and maybe a customer or two, or maybe we can't share that on LinkedIn?
I think we can, but yeah, we've worked with customers from all over 33 countries with actual operations, not just clearinghouse. And then, we've got a customer in the software space, Optimizely, that I don't know how many countries they operate in, but it's a lot. And we've helped them with that setup over time, and they're a great customer of ours. So lots of experience. Not going to sit here and promise that we know every taxation rule. Usually we know enough to say we don't know, which is probably as important, because we don't try to overdo it and say, oh yeah, we can set up Indian taxation, but we know people that can. Same thing in Brazil and South America. They're very complicated. Mexico's got very complicated tax laws, and not only tax laws, but statutory requirements as money move, like all sorts of banking requirements and e-invoicing stuff. And again, my job is to know what I do know and what I don't know, and find people that know those particular areas. So I think that's where, and we have an extensive network of partners and connections and people that we go to when we hit these types of areas that, hey, we don't specialize in this, but we need some help. And we've always had successful relationships in that. So yeah, but it's interesting learning the statutory requirements of various countries. And my favorite that I've ever learned, and I doubt anybody's watching that, but the old Epicor days, when Epicor bought some Russian company that had an ERP system. And so they built in what's called Red Sterno accounting. And every time it's like this click button of is it Red Sterno, it's really weird. And I guess, and if I'm wrong on this, I apologize, but this is my understanding of it, is that they taxed organizations on the total number of debits and credits. So the value of your debits and credits. So in Red Sterno accounting, you could do a negative debit and a negative credit, which makes no sense to anybody who's an accountant. But if the government's going to tax you on it, you're going to figure out a way around it. So that's one of my favorite lessons of like, what does this mean from a taxation standpoint rule? So that little tidbit, if you're interested in learning some dumb fact on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will avoid Russian statutory tax requirements.
I think everybody is these days.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay. And then this one's come across this question a lot in the sales team, but when should our team consider making the jump from QuickBooks to a system like NetSuite? Curious what your take is here, Glenn.
I think it's one of those, when you know, and there's some obvious hard stops. Like one of the first NetSuite implementations we did was because they were on QuickBooks Enterprise and they were hitting up against the 2 gigabyte limit that Enterprise imposed on people, and their environment was wildly unstable and blowing up all the time. I think once you're starting to hire to manage accounting processes that could be streamlined, then that's the telltale sign of we need to grow up. I also think there's areas where, and what trips me out is like QuickBooks is easy to use. It's super easy. It connects to your bank. It's got all these little features that smaller businesses use. So when you're moving to a system like NetSuite, certain things are going to be different and they're going to take longer. And a lot of people don't understand that. Is you're thinking you're getting something that's just going to push the button and it's done. But NetSuite is that much more complex because of all the options of how you can handle things. RevRec, amortization schedules, this, that. And I think people kind of miss that, yes, you're stepping so much forward in so many areas, but there's certain things that were just easy in QuickBooks that become a little bit more labor intensive until you get used to them in NetSuite. But I think organizations inherently will understand if they're wanting to mature beyond a certain point. And we have a great customer case study with Hank Sauce. And, they were running on QuickBooks and super successful. Love those guys. Especially love that it, the genesis of it was like 20 miles down the road in St. Augustine where I live, which is even cooler for me. But, and they were like, well, we were taking a lot more serious when we went to raise money and we had NetSuite. And we're not just some fly by night on QuickBooks or whatever that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can run their business on. And I think part of that is just understanding what your vision is for the organization and what matters to you. Because I've seen successful $100 million businesses run on QuickBooks, and I've seen $5 million businesses that struggle. I've seen a company try to, with QuickBooks and Fishbowl, waste almost $300,000 trying to implement.
Yeah.
I've known a lot of people that have messed that up, at Fishbowl and QuickBooks and what they think they're getting, but Fishbowl really controls inventory costing and it doesn't reflect tier accurately. And 6 months down the road, you're doing $1 million inventory adjustment because you don't know what the hell you got.
Well, we won't throw too much shade on Fishbowl and QuickBooks. We'll keep it light.
There's tons of success stories. They wouldn't be successful without it. We get called in when there's a problem, right? Like, this isn't working. We need your help. So we always hear the bad. We don't hear the good. I mean, that's the truth of most of us in consulting. We only hear the bad stuff. We don't ever hear like, oh, I absolutely love that application. It was the best thing we ever used. They wouldn't be talking to us then. So.
All right. Well, I think we've got time for one more, maybe two more. So if you have any you want to throw in the chat, now's your time. But I will jump to this next question. Again, another long one. This is actually one that we came across on Reddit earlier today. Do you have experience with setting up and running MRP within NetSuite? We are a manufacturer with deep bill of materials and trying to find an alternative way to not create work orders to run our demand and supply plan. This is causing our transaction lines to increase and causing an overage on our account and increased billing. Whole can of worms. I've been playing in the sandbox and I just can't get the setup all the way to show this consumption. Any advice is appreciated.
Yeah. So I was trying to think about this. I mean, the trick is if you have a complicated bill of materials, it's going to explode that out to every individual item that gets consumed against it. And that's kind of a struggle. Now, if you have multiple work orders where this work order generates this work order generates this work order, to consolidate the transaction lines, you can use a phantom so that all of those just exist under that initial one. So you're not generating multiple transactions. You're still going to have the transaction lines, but you're not going to have the duplicate nature of the main line and all the details plus the tax and all the other stuff. I think one of those things on the transaction line and not to get myself in trouble with NetSuite or Oracle, but it makes sense if you're having performance issues and the system isn't functioning as fast as you want it to, because let's be honest here, the cloud is just offloaded storage, offloaded servers. Okay, we used to sell it a lot differently and talk all sexy and wax poetic about it, but the truth is, I just moved it from under my desk to somebody else. And I'm sharing that with somebody else. And I have to understand I can only have this much of that box. If I want more of that box, I got to pay for it. And that is just the way it is. But I think if you are looking to get around it, I would look at phantom work orders, or I would look if I could consolidate some of my materials into assemblies and perhaps treat those as purchase items if I'm not physically manufacturing them. Then I can at least know the components. But actually, I'm not sure that helps. I think it's still, I think from NetSuite's technical perspective, I think it still explodes those out on the work order, even if it's a purchased assembly. So I'd have to look at that because I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
So yeah, rocking a hard place on that one.
Oh, no worries. Well, that's all the questions that we had today, and Glenn, certainly appreciate your time and diving into all of these and giving your 2 cents. We appreciate that. Appreciate the viewers coming on today, listening in. If you have additional questions, feel free to ping us. But yeah, we certainly appreciate the time. Again, we're running these bi-weekly. So every Friday, we're doing a lunch and learn from 12 to 1 Eastern time. Good opportunity to talk to an expert like Glenn and get his 2 cents on the matter. But yeah, we look forward to.
If I say something stupid, feel free to call me out on it, because I certainly have done so plenty times before. But the intent here is just to be helpful and offer some insight. But it's a lot of fun, so I appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll be back on the 30th. Look forward to seeing you guys then. Thanks.